Him, right? Yeah. Series. Huh. Fine. Okay, sir. So let us get started with okay. So let me basically try to speak about two concepts of running our applications. Okay. Let us assume that we have built the fast API in the class, right? The books where we store the books to the database. Okay. Now, if I have to run that application, okay, on the cloud, whatever I've written in fast API. So what are the possible options? Okay. So deploying applications to cloud. Okay. Right, sir. So the first option is straightforward. Let us try to basically speak about option. The first option which we have is virtual machines or EC2 instances. Okay. So if I have to deploy my even though I'm trying to write Python application, the story remains same irrespective of programming language. So first try to create virtual machines, and in the virtual machine, what are the steps? So install Python, create virtual environment, and uh, run the application. Okay, so if I have basically developed fast API, I will be using UVcorn. If I have developed any simple Python application, Python main.py or whatever it is to start your application. Okay, this is the first one. So the story looks something like this. This is same for every cloud, sir. Even though I might be using Azure icons because they are a little bit more convincing, but the basic idea is now this is some network. In this network, I'll have a subnet, and then I'll have one more subnet, and in this somehow I directly run the database, okay, or indirectly run the database is over here. Okay, so then I try to take virtual machine. So on this virtual machine or in this virtual machine, I'll try to install Python, and on top of that, whatever API or app which you have written, we will try to run it over here. Okay, or app. Okay, now let us assume that if this is a backend app, if this is a backend app, then we will have website designed in one more subnet which will basically hit, but the story remains same irrespective of programming language. If I'm building Java applications, I'll replace that Python with Java and do the necessary steps. This is what happens. And for the people who were there in the morning in DevOps class, when we have discussed about AppTire, okay, the whole AppTire concept was around these kind of applications, right? So I've done that, and now this application will try to speak with this database, and it starts populating values. Now this is all absolutely fine. Now let us assume that the traffic grows a lot. Okay, so one's application will not be able to handle all the traffic. So for that reason, what we will try to do is we go for scaling. So in that case, rather than running it in one virtual machines, you will automatically scale it into number of applications. The moment you go for scaling, you will implement some kind of load balancer. So users will hit the load balancer. Load balancer will forward the request to one of the machines because you don't have one machine where your application is running. This is what happens. But this is a very raw way. Okay. But here, as a organization, I have to basically focus more in terms of maintaining from operating system, because I own from operating system. Let us assume that I have installed Python on a Ubuntu machine. Ubuntu gives a very quick, important security update. Updating is my problem. So I have to do that. So if you are deploying an application like this, this falls under the category of infra as a service. Okay. Now over here, other things which you will be doing is scaling. You would be load balancing to make the application work. This is the first option. The second option is the PaaS platform. PaaS platform is platform as a service. So in this, what we get is directly deploy your application into Python runtime. Okay, fine, sir. Let us basically do this activity. So what I'll try to do is, where is that we were trying to write code? Classroom Python August 24 APIs. We might not have written a very fancy calculator, but we have written some calculator over here, right? Let us try to see what is inside this calculator. Okay. Control Shift P, Python select interpreter. Oh. Okay. Now, if you remember this application doesn't require any database. We have written a very simple stuffs. Okay. Where this application, when you try to run, okay. Machipema? All of this did you forgot? Yeah. This is the first time Rashin, class 2 Rashin. Okay. Right. Okay, right now it says that your application is running on 8000 port. So http://localhost:800/docs. And if you remember, we have written this sample because this is an API, it will not have any UI. So try it out. I said that whenever you pass 10 here and whenever you pass 20 over here, and then whenever you execute, you get this response of. Yeah. Now let us assume that this is the application which I want to deploy. Okay. So let me try to show you something in Azure and then GCP, because we won't have this kind of product in AWS. Okay, right. First, I'll try to create the free one without any application. Then we'll try to deploy our application inside that. Okay. So what I'll do is let me go into something called as app services. Okay, let me try to create one saying that what is the application which you want to do. Do you have web app or do you have a web press database? So if I was installing that library application, I would have gone with this option. But since I'm going with this, I'll try to tell that this is what I'll be trying to do. And then here I'll create a resource group. I'll try to call it as PaaS. Okay, and then it is asking what is your website's name. I'll try to call it as LT calculator. Okay, and then it is asking in which region are we basically trying to run it. I prefer, okay, let me go with Central India. All right, and then it is asking what is your runtime stack. Here I am not selecting operating system, I'm selecting platform. I'll try to tell that I'm using Python 3.11. Okay, now it says that, okay, how do you want to run it? So for example, over here there are different pricing plans. There is a free plan as well. And now here, let me try to what is that we should call this? Okay, PaaS demo. Okay, and then let me try to go with free plan. But if I go with other plans, I get some other features also. I'm not interested in hardware. Hardware speaks about how much RAM, how much CPU, to what extent you can scale. Okay, so right now if I go with free plan, it is free for 60 minutes in a day. You will get one memory, one CPU and 1 GB of RAM, and this is something which you can go for here. So if you go with a basic plan, then you will basically get one virtual CPU, 1.75 GB of RAM, 10 GB of storage. You can try to go with this, but let me try to go with the feature perspective. Now over here, if you try to see here, if I go with premium plans, I can automatically scale. There is no need for me to worry about scaling. What do you call the Azure will do it for me. Okay, and then here there are many plans over here, but for the first time, let us try to go with free plan itself. Now let me select it. Now it is trying to tell, do you want to do you have a database? If I have a database, I would have selected that. And now over here, what they also try to tell is, if you already have a code in a GitHub, then you just give me your repository, I'll deploy it for you. Okay, so CI/CD pipeline is also handled by them. Okay, let me go with next, networking. Do you want public access or is it a private access? Next. If you want to enable application insights, then whatever is happening in your application, it will try to trace it. Okay, this is basically for security. Go with next, review and create. I have not deployed anything. I'm basically trying to tell that I want a Python environment. That's it. Okay. AWS also has something like this, which looks like this, which is called as Elastic Beanstalk, but I don't even want to discuss over here because it is not in competition. Yeah, it is like when we are speaking about search engines, speaking about Yahoo search right now. Okay, so no one uses Yahoo search, right? Inka tappadu anukunnadu tappe evadu vaadadani. All right, so yeah. Fine, sir. So it will basically give me a URL. I have not deployed any application. It will give me a dummy page, but yeah. If you try to see, they give me settings where I can set environmental variables. If you remember, when we were trying to write that fast API app to try to tell where the database is, we have passed the environmental variable. Now, yeah, are you seeing this? You try to take this, copy this. Your application is secure by default. Okay, HTTPS. And since we have not deployed anything, we'll get a basic page once that is up. That's it. Okay. Now, when we speak about the same thing, okay. Let me go with Google platform. Okay. Now, if you go to the Google Cloud platform, we have something similar to this. Come on. Okay, right, sir. So where is let me try to search. Okay. Are you seeing App Engine? Okay, again, you can write that I want to create a application. Then it is trying to tell, okay, in which location do you want? Yeah, I'm okay with Central US. So how do you want the security to be? I have selected some security, right? Let me go with next. Okay, ఇక్కడ dummy page వచ్చిందా? Right? Now I can basically deploy a web application, but still, let me try to. Okay. Then it is asking what is the language which you are going to use. I'm going to use the Python language. What is your environment? Do you want a standard environment or whatever it is? And then he's trying to tell that what you can do is once you have the command line application, you can start deploying to the App Engine just by doing these commands. Okay, if you want the standard documentation, they are basically present over here. So all you have to do is build your web APIs and then you can deploy in these two things. Okay, right. Now let me go over here. Okay, and then for the deployment steps, okay, let me try to ask this. Once you have any API, any language which you have developed the code, so deploying fast API to Azure App Service. If you all you want is steps, it is very easy. Okay, you log in into portal, you configure, okay, and then you need to basically set up the startup command. Okay, this is when the code is in GitHub. Okay, but we don't have code in GitHub. Let us assume I want to deploy from local. How about deployment from local workstation or developer machine or whatever you call it? Right. So what it says, prepare your application, try to write it. Okay, do all of this. Okay, and in Azure, go and then configuration settings and then try to tell that this is what you want to basically do, and you can deploy your application from CLI. Okay, right, sir. So what is it I need to do now? Go into this. What is he asking me to change? Okay, so just go to Azure portal, navigate to app service, go to the configuration. Okay, so now in configuration, in general settings, set the startup command. So what was our startup command? If you go into here also, you will understand. The way we started up our application was we have run uvcon main app -- reload. Yeah. So right. So uvcon workers bind. Okay, fine. Whatever it is, I try to click on say done. Yeah. If you have any environmental variables, you will try to set over here, saying that my application needs an environmental variable which is database underscore URI is equals to this or whatever it is. You try to set it from here. Okay. And then what is the next thing which you're trying to tell? All you can do is you can deploy your application from here. Okay. Let me try to do that stuff, but where is Azure? Okay. Now sign in into Azure. This is much more convenient. Let me get into Azure subscription app services, LT calculator. Okay. Right. Fine. Application settings. Okay. Right. Now, if you want, Control Shift P, Azure app, deploy to slot. So I'm not sure what is my subscription. Why am I getting 2 subscriptions? 1 minute, sir. I think I need to fix this. ఇందులో ఏది నాదో తెలియదు. Fine, sir. LT calculator. Okay. Oh, no. I have gone with the free plan, right? Yeah. Ideally, you will deploy to slot and you will select your dev slot there. Azure app. Deploy to web app. And what is my web app? Select the folder to deploy. Yes, this is my folder. Azure subscription 1. LT calculator. Would you like to update? Do whatever you want. Deploy. That's it. Now from your Visual Studio Code, your code is getting deployed to this. And in this, you might get face the configuration issues 1 or 2 times. But as a developer, that's it. My job is done. I write the code, I deploy it. Okay. And this will be my dev environment. I'll try to check whether the things are working or not. And then I submit it to the GitHub. From there, DevOps will take over. Yeah. Now it says deployment has succeeded, and it is trying to that you want to browse website. Stream logs. I'll try to that I want to browse my website. Generally, you don't deploy APIs into the services. You deploy your something which has some kind of user interfaces into this, because there are better places to deploy APIs. Okay. Are you understanding this area? So in this case, as a developer, you need not worry about operating system, nothing. You have a app directly deployed to that. Okay. So generally, in reality, whenever your organization is using Azure App Services, they go with slots. You will have an access to the dev slot as a developer, but rest of the things will be something which your DevOps engineers will be worrying about. Okay. Fine. Now, if you speak about Google, Google has made it extremely clear. So all you need to do is download the SDK, gcloud init, gcloud app, deploy, and then they have given different examples over here. Okay. Standard Python, if you want to deploy Django application. Okay. So generally these applications will have UIs. We don't deploy APIs over here. Okay. But this is much more convenient. Okay. For example, if I'm trying to run a small website, which I've completely developed in Python or Java or even .NET for that matter, I would not go and take the pain of maintaining virtual machines. I'll deploy it from here. Okay. So are we clear on this aspect, sir? Yeah. So this is something which we basically call as platform as a service. Yeah, I have deployed Fast API. Now anyone who wants to access this application, you can give it a try. I'm just sharing this on yeah. You go over here, try it out. This is not a very fancy API, but that's okay. 10, 20, execute. Yeah, we got 30. And this code is not running locally on my machine. I've shared the URL. Any one of you can basically deploy it. That's it. And it is globally available. And now if I go with the premium pricing plan, when number of users automatically increase, this automatically gets scaled and it comes down. You need not maintain load balancer. And if you try to see, my website is HTTPS now. It is secure in nature. When you are trying to do it on a virtual machine, SSL certificate, your problem. Now I don't need not worry about it. So this is all managed by Azure. So as a developer, for me, this is the most convenient option. Am I clear on this? Yes. So do we understand what platform as services? Google also does exactly the same thing, sir. Yeah. So over here, they have this Django application. Okay. So yeah, Django comes with a UI. So they are trying to tell that how do you basically do it? Gcloud init, create app, do that. Try to ensure that your application runs locally. And this is basically if your application has a database. We don't have any databases at this moment. If you have databases, you can create all of this. Okay, any secrets which you want to store. Okay, and then you can basically run the application locally, and you can do all of the other stuffs. And finally, when you want to deploy your application, all you have to do is Gcloud app. And isn't it convenient, sir? Yes. So this changes the whole perspective of creating virtual machine, installing, configuration. I'm not worried about all of that stuff. This is the approach. Clear? But this is not very widely used if you are building APIs. Okay? As manam build chesin API. So for example, if I would have built Django application where you get a UI and all of that stuff. Okay? Right? So then I would have gone with this kind of stuff. Okay, if I would have built something like Spring Boot, Spring Pet Clinic kind of an application where I have some kind of a UI where people can access, this is the most cheapest, most convenient way for me to do the things. Clear on this? So I can deploy my application from where? Directly from Visual Studio Code. No CLI, nothing. Now, if you want to add some more APIs, so let me try to basically tell that I want to basically change it. Okay, let me try to write app dot what is that we have written? Okay, post. Okay, yeah, multiply. Right, fine, my code is ready. Okay, so first thing is I try to run the things locally to cross check, but once I've run that, deploy to web application, Azure subscription, LT calculator. Yeah, it is time that I'll override the existing environment. Okay, that's it. Wait for some more time. Now you have an API with calculator method added to it, which is exposed globally. Right? So yeah, for this you need to have Azure tools. Don't worry about this extension. You are not going to do this. The reason why I wanted to show you is I wanted you to understand the power of platform as a service. Okay, if there is a platform as a service, it is more convenient to developers who can directly deploy from their machines. Okay, so right now everything is happening, and you can deploy all of this from CLI commands also. Yeah, but generally we would prefer doing it from our editor. So browse /docs. Okay, I think the latest version is still not up, because if it is up, it should show multiply also. Okay, local run is sir. It will take some time, sir, because that is how it is. http://localhost 88. Yeah, this takes some time to reflect here, because manam vadedi chanda service, free service. There is no cost. As long as you have Azure, you can use that. This takes time. Okay, come on. Okay, just try it after 5 to 10 minutes. You should be able to basically see what is happening inside it. So, but do you agree to this point that it is convenient? Okay. Now over here, let me go to the same Perplexity, and where is that? Right. So how to deploy Fast API application into Google App Engine from VS Code. Let us try to see what it says. Configure, set up the VS Code. Okay, all of this is fine. You have created the stuff. Okay, and then what is the trying to tell? You need to create a file which is called as app.yaml. In that, try to tell what is your runtime and what is your start command. Okay, and then Gcloud app deploy. Oh, they have not given any extension. Generally, ఇప్పుడు వరకు జనాలకు ఉన్న కసికి డెవలప్ చేయాలి. చూద్దాం ఆగండి. GC. Strange. Yeah, they have given Gemini, but okay. Fine. Okay. VS Code extensions. Okay, Visual Studio Code extensions, and then Google Cloud. Okay, Google Cloud Platform, Google Cloud Spanner. Okay, Google Code Assist. One minute, sir. I had to select the company. I'm basically always making a wrong choice. Google. They have not given. So Google somehow hates this idea probably. Which is an organization who has done it. Generally, you can categorize this based on organizations also. Yeah. Google Cloud. No, sir, they have not given. This is the only thing which they have given. Okay. There might be some third-party stuffs, but I don't want to get into this. Okay. Right. Now, if you are developing in AWS, AWS at least gives you developer kit. So I think Amazon developer kit, you install, and with this developer kit, you can basically work around. And then if you go with Amazon Web Services, they have given decent extensions. Okay. Let it be Visual Studio Code, and Azure DevOps. I'm not sure why Google is not doing it, because at this moment, Visual Studio Code is the most widely used developer editor, IDE. Fine, sir. So are we clear on this? Yeah. Now they are trying to tell that MUL is added now. Yeah, ni cheppanu kadandi society service idi. This is like Satranlo Bhojanam. Yeah. Did you got MUL now? Yeah, try it out. Request body 10, value 20, execute, you get the response of 200. Yeah. So, right. Fine, sir. Did you understand this? Yeah. Now, whatever I'm going to speak right now is something which is expected out of all of us, whether we are a developer or a DevOps engineer. That is something which is called as serverless platform. So my focus is on this area. Let us basically try to understand what is serverless. Okay. So I will try to write about serverless at a in a different section altogether. Serverless. Fine, sir. Now, if you try to see, I am running my calculator API in Azure App Service. Yes or no? Yes. So what is the basic requirement for this application to be running? If I'm trying to run in virtual machine, this virtual machine should be running all the time. Yes or no? App service should be running all the time. So whether there are customers or there are no customers, every month I am paying 720 hours of bill. Then comes the serverless technology, which tries to tell you that, okay, let us try to think a different way about applications. What we will try to do is, as a cloud provider, I am going to charge you only when someone is executing your code. Only when someone is executing your code. You need not worry about load balancing. You need not worry about scaling. Just try to write the simple code. And when your code is executing, then only I'll be charging. So is it not a convenient proposition? So write my code, I deploy the same calculator, I try to upload it over there. When no users are calling that API, my bill is 0. When someone is using that, according to the usage, basically I'll be charged. So this is a basic proposition of serverless technology. Okay, right. So before I define serverless, what I want you to do is, okay, I'll give you 5 minutes of time. This is something which I want you to do about. This is an exercise. Find out. You can basically use Perplexity. That is what I want you to do. But if you want Google also, you can do it. Find out what is serverless. Okay, right? And why should we consider using serverless over PaaS or infrastructure as a service? And now the most trickiest thing to understand is, okay, right, or this is something which I will try to tell you. Next question are not required. ఈ రెండు find out చేయండి. I'll be waiting for 5 minutes. All you have to do is ask Perplexity and then read through that stuff. Yeah, people on the web, are we doing it, sir? Right. So what is serverless stuff which you got? Let me ask the same questions. So let me create a new thread. What is serverless? So if you basically try to look into this stuff, the basic idea is you try to write function. Don't worry about any other servers provisioning or whatever it is. Only when your code is getting executed, then it will be called. And this technology basically revolves around something called as event-driven architecture. What do I mean by event-driven? When someone is calling your stuff, then only the execution is happening. Okay, so someone has to trigger whatever you have written. Okay, it's not that you run all the time. Okay, that's the basic functionality of it. Now, the basic idea over here is in serverless we have two options. One is function as a service, the other one is backend as a service. So in backend as a service, what you get is you get serverless databases. Okay, or Google gives you something called as Google Firebase. So for example, if you want to deploy a mobile app, I want to any mobile app requires authentication. I don't want to write the authentication code. This backend as a service basically gives me that. I implement those libraries and I manage all the users from Google Firebase. AWS has something called as Cognito. Azure has something called as Entra or Active Directory, where you can manage all the users of your application. So they are basically taking care of one functionality of your application altogether. Now I want to store my the data that is generated by my mobile applications, where I give the option to store locally on the phone and also basically online. So all of these platforms basically give you this. This is basically used, or this backend as a service started with mobile app development. Now anyone who is starting to write a mobile application will not start, okay, how do I create users? No, they go to Google Firebase, create an account and hook it up with their mobile app. That is where you get login with Facebook, login with Google and everything integrated in this. Okay, so they handle the whole authentication. That is one aspect of backend as a service. And what you and me are looking at this moment is basically around functions as a service. Okay, right, because I want to do some of the administrative activities on the cloud and I don't want them running all the time. So whenever, for example, I have written a Lambda function, okay, or a serverless function, which basically stops an EC2 machine, stops Azure virtual machine, stops Google Cloud machine. Okay, the code is written, but only when it is called, it gets executed, and only for that duration I'll be charged. If there are no executions, the bill is 0. That is the basic idea. So this is for our administrative use cases. But there are many companies who are using serverless applications to build something which are called as nano services. So we know monolith, everything inside one application. Then we came into something which is called as microservices. You break your application into some functional component, like order service, okay, or cart service, payment service. All of this you try to run inside a container. That is something which you call as a microservice. Now, if you can break your application into much smaller units, where you are trying to speak about only one functionality, that is create a order, okay, update an order, right? And these kind of things, if you are trying to write, that becomes nano services. Okay, so generally whenever you try to build your application in nano services, at least for an application like e-commerce, you will have somewhere around 10,000 nano services running, but nothing will be running all the time. Okay, there are some applications, some companies who are going with these models. They sound crazy, but there are people who are doing it. Okay, fine. So the basic idea over here is, okay, yeah, I'll try to copy all of this. ఏ మాత్రం సిగ్గు లేకుండా ఇదే పెట్టేస్తున్నాను. Yeah, fine, because this is exactly what I want you guys to understand about serverless. Okay, and there are all the big cloud providers have serverless. Okay, so since we are focused on 1 minute, sir. since we are focused on serverless offerings, that is function FaaS offerings, AWS has something which is called as Lambda. Azure has something which is called as Azure Functions. GCP has something which is called as Google Functions. They are equally capable, they do the same thing, but there is only one challenge. For example, I have written a fast API code. I can run it in AWS, I can run it in Azure, I can run wherever I want. But the challenge is, if you try to look into this world, okay, are you seeing there is something called as vendor lock-in? The code which I have written for AWS Lambda, I cannot directly try to take it and run it on Azure. Okay, because the way you write these functions are very much vendor specific. Okay, అంటే Azure లో Lambda function రాయాలంటే ఏ steps follow అవుతామో, logic is same, but the basic structure is different. So you cannot directly take the Lambda function and run it on Azure. In the same way, you cannot take Azure function and run it on GCP because they are not compatible with each other. There is no standard as such. Okay, right. Now, the basic idea, what we will try to do is, okay, I want to try to do this application, okay, in Lambda. Just now we have written a calculator in fast API. Okay, now if I have to do something like that, okay, how to do that? So shall we try doing that? Yes. So let me first go into Google, AWS, and then let me get into Lambda. So Lambda supports various programming languages, and all Lambda is one function. And Lambda is all about one function. Or let me also put that. AWS Lambda restrictions, because నేను చెప్పిన రాసిన అంతా ఒకటే. So execution time, what is the maximum time? 15 minutes. The function which you are going to write cannot take more than 3 GB. Okay, the size of request which you are trying to send cannot be more than. So whenever you are trying to write that Lambda function, there are two ways of writing Lambda function. You can try to write directly in the AWS console, or you can basically upload the code also. You can create a zip file and give the zip file to Lambda, and that package cannot exceed more than 250 MB. Okay, so now by default you have a limit of 1000 concurrent executions, but this limit is unlimited. It depends on your account, how much you are paying the bill. They will basically automatically increase. Present మీరు నేను రాస్తే parallel గా 1000 మంది యాక్సెస్ చేయొచ్చు. But you can raise a request to Amazon, and Amazon will freely raise this request limits. You can consider this to be almost unlimited. These are what the restrictions. I'm not even writing about them because you can Google this out. So what is the restriction? The code cannot run more than 15 minutes, and then you cannot write anything which is greater than 3 GB. If your code is taking more than 3 GB of RAM, it is not fit for Lambda. Okay, ideally you should be mana rase code 128 MB chala ekkuva, because we are writing very simple things. We are not writing the whole code, we are writing one function. Okay, and then whenever you are packaging your application, that is zip the entire application, that zip cannot be greater than 250 MB, and then you can by default you will have this. Okay, and now these are fine. Okay, for example, right now it supports many languages, but if you want any customized language, you are working on a special language, then the only option for you is use a container, use a Docker container. Okay, let me try to write a Lambda function. So create a function. Okay, right, so watch classroom recordings. I am not going to give a screenshot for everything. I'm focused only on the code part. Rest of the part, try to look into the video. So now if you try to see, it is trying to that you can try to write Lambda function in any of these languages. Okay, So if you want to run C++, Go or Rust language, then you have to select Amazon Linux. But basically they support all of this. And let me try to select Python 3.12. And then let me try to call this my function as calculator. Okay. And then in AWS, whenever you are trying to run an AWS resource, and if that resource needs permission on other resource, we need to have a role. But right now we don't need anything because we are writing this code which executes in Lambda function. So for example, if you try to tell that I will upload the video, I will upload an image and give it to the Lambda function. Now the Lambda function should convert that image and apply some image filters and store it in S3 bucket. Now your Lambda needs to speak with S3 bucket. In that case, I'll be basically giving permissions over here. Right now, I'm trying to write a calculator program. That means that this Lambda function need not speak with any other thing. Everything is running inside it. I try to create a Lambda function. This Lambda function should go and create a VPC. Then this Lambda function needs to have a permission to VPC. In that cases, I'll be playing with that area. Now, if you try to look at advanced settings, it is trying to tell that, okay, do you want to call this? If you try to tell enable VPC, that means that I'm exposing this Lambda function for private access, not external. This is what you will be doing as a DevOps engineers in your organization. Okay. Now, if you want enable function URL, then what you would get is you would get a HTTPS endpoint for your Lambda. If you want IAM access, you can give it. Otherwise, you can leave it. I am not even going to do all of this. Okay. Right. Let me try to click on create function. So whenever you try to create a Lambda function, you get two arguments. This is a simple Python function with two simple arguments. Okay. Let us not worry about all of this nonsense. Let us just have a look at code. So what is this? It is taking event and it is context. Okay. So event is basically the data that you are sending. ఈ Lambda function ని కాల్ చేసేటప్పుడు మీరు ఏ డేటా అయితే పాస్ చేశారో అదంతా ఈవెంట్ లో ఉంటుంది. So whatever data which you are calling with this Lambda function, that will be in the event. Context is about this Lambda function. So what is the name of this Lambda function? How much of RAM do we have? So if you want to have all of that, you can go over here. So if you try to look into this, what is my configuration, sir? Memory is 128 MB. I can't have anything less than this. But for whatever work which I'm doing, 128 is enough. Ephemeral storage. So this is a temporary storage. As long as your code is running, if you need some storage, you can try to set that limit. Okay. So now if you want to basically run languages like Java, right, they have this problem of something which is called as cold starts. So if you want to solve that problem, that is the case. Now, what is the timeout? Timeout is what is the maximum time which your code will take to run. So let me try to put this as 1 minute and 3 seconds. Okay. Let me try to click on save. Okay. Now, our Lambda function will be executed only when someone calls it. Only when someone calls it. It will not execute on its own. Okay. Right. And after your Lambda function is executed, if you want, you can add a destination saying that after this Lambda function is executed, I want to basically call one more Lambda function. I want to send a request to the event bus. I want to send the response to the message. You can do all sorts of this stuff. But I'm not going with all of that. Let me just try to go over here. Okay. Now you can configure triggers, permissions, VPC, which database are you using, right? Everything we can basically configure. Okay. What are the different triggers which you want? Okay. But simple. Let us go with the code source. Now what I'll try to expect is this will be my typical input. Same calculator. Okay. I'll have number 1 with some number in it. Number 2 with some other number in it. Okay. And then I will have something like operation. And in this operation, you can have add or subtract or multiply. I'll try to write only for add, but you can try to put one if condition because I'm quite sure you guys are capable of doing that. This is my input structure. Okay. Now, whenever I try to see like this, something like this, what does this become in Python? Is it not a dictionary? Yes. So if this is a dictionary, if I want to access number one, what is it? I'll try to event of number one. So let me try to write number one is equals to event of number one. Number two is equals to event of number two. Okay. Result. Okay. Let me try to tell. Result is equals to what should I write? Okay, I'm directly adding. Let me not even consider operation add. I mere add చేసుకోండి. If conditional రాయగలరుగా మీరు. If event of operation equal to add, then add two values. If event of operation equal to, I'm not doing that because we'll try to do a better use case. Okay, so then result is equals to number one plus number two. Now, if you remember, let us assume that I have a dictionary where I have created something called as event, and in this event in dictionary I have something like number one colon 10 comma number two colon 20. Okay, now type of event, this is exactly what would happen. Now I want to insert result inside this. So what is that I will try to do? Event of result is equals to ప్రస్తుతం నేను హార్డ్ కోడ్ చేస్తున్నాను 30 అని రాస్తున్నా. Okay, now if I try to print the event, will I get all the three values? Yeah. Now for example, if I try to tell import JSON, now if I try to write JSON dot dumps of event, am I not getting a JSON response? Okay, so now what I'll try to tell is JSON dot dumps of event, and over here I'll try to tell that event of result is equals to మన క్యాలిక్యులేటర్ ఇక్కడ పొడిచింది అదేగా. దీని క్యాలిక్యులేటర్ రెస్పాన్స్ రిక్వెస్ట్ ఇలా ఏదో రకరకాలు రాసి, this is exactly what we have done. If you try to look into the fast API, whatever we have built, at the end of the day, if you try to look at what I have done over here, so you call me a multiply function and you give me have value 1 value 2 అక్కడ number 1 number 2 అని పెట్టాం, but fine. Yeah, so if I put 10 and if I put 2 and if I execute, what is the result which I'm getting? Value 1 value 2, and I am also doing the same thing from a lambda function. Done, sir? So now let me go to AWS over here, and then let me try to tell that whatever changes which I have done, deploy them. Am I clear on this, sir? Okay. Now there is something called as test, and now let me try to configure this test event, and let me try to call this as event name is calculations, and what is the our JSON? This is our JSON. Let me try to copy paste this. ఇదేగా మనకు కావాల్సింది. Yeah, now let me try to click on save, and then let me try to click on test function to see whether it is working correctly or not. Let me try to call it as test. It says that I have called this, and the response which I got is number 1, number 2, and 30. Okay, wonderful. But if I have uploaded that, but try to tell that enable HTTPS code signing, I'll get a URL and directly you can execute the URL. But we will try to deploy this application in a better way. But let us try to see over here. And the time execute in the code 1.8 milliseconds. Milliseconds is 1000 of a second. And what was the bill that you got for? So here, what is the unit, sir? Unit is millisecond. Okay, so you're not just like EC2 by default, we are charged for 1 hour. Whether you run it for 1 minute or 10 minutes, you are charged for 1 hour. Ikkada unit of execution and the bill anta 1 millisecond. And I have shown you already that there are many requests which are free for this. Now you try, and 1 million requests are free, if I'm not wrong. You try to write Lambda function and play whatever it is. Till 1 million, there is no charge at all. Okay. So is it not simple? But understand one thing, here you don't write application, you write functionality, only one functionality. And this can never take more than 15 minutes. Are we clear on this, sir? Okay. Sounds interesting. So shall we build some application? Yeah. Remember library and books? Whatever we have done in Fast API, I want to do the same thing. But this time what I want to do is, in AWS, we have an interesting database which is called as DynamoDB. What is it, sir? DynamoDB. DynamoDB is a NoSQL database. So there is no structure. వాళ్ళని ఇబ్బంది అర్థమవుద్ది లేదా అన్నది పర్లేదు కూర్చుంటామంటే వచ్చి క్లాస్లో కూర్చోమన్నాను, లేదంటే ఆయనకు కూర్చొని ఓపెన్ చేసి ప్రాక్టీస్ చేసుకున్నాం. రైట్. ఎందుకంటే మనం వాళ్ళు పొరపాటును తెలియక టయానికి వచ్చినట్టున్నారు. ఓకే, ఫైన్ సార్. సో we have a DynamoDB, and in DynamoDB I can basically store items of any schema. There is only one thing which you have to give. You have to give one primary key. That's it. Apart from that, everything is flexible. But if it is a relational database, if you remember, I have to tell that this book will have ID, this book will have name, this book will have title. You have to give specific set of fields. But this is a NoSQL database, no fields. Second part, this kind of databases can scale horizontally. And you can multiply number of databases and it will still work, because NoSQL databases are designed to work horizontally scaled. The reason why Amazon has created this DynamoDB is they were having a lot of problems for creating Amazon shopping site because of replications and all of that stuff. So they wanted a database which is available globally, okay, which will do not have any size restrictions. Okay, so your disk size is going down, and they didn't wanted all of that. So they have created this database which is called as DynamoDB. Now what I'll try to do is I'll try to write a Lambda function. So I'll try to write one Lambda function which is create book, and then I'll try to write one more Lambda function which is update book, then get book, and in the same way delete book. Okay, we have done the same thing in Fast API also. So can't write all of that in one Lambda function? You can, but you are not supposed to. Because why? This is a function as a service. To try to have one functionality in one Lambda function, that is the best way, because in that cases I can try to run it in 128 MB, this in 128 MB, this in 128 MB, and this in 128 MB, and depending on what your users are calling, my code will be finished, executed quickly. When my code executes quickly, then I'll get responses also quickly. So what this Lambda functions does is they try to take a input from you, and then they try to store. And I'll be storing all of this in. But at finally, what is that we want? We want a REST API. Okay, but Lambda is not a REST API. Lambda is basically someone has to execute it. So for that reason, what I'll try to do is I'll try to create something called as API gateway. Okay, and in this I'll try to create a REST API. And whenever anyone hits this API gateway and then tries to tell that the request is post, then it will call create book function. When the request is put, it will go and do this function. When the request is get, then it will go over here. When the request is delete, then it will go and hit over here. Okay, now from your browser anywhere in the world, so I can make this API gateway public or private or whatever it is. So now you try to call this from Chrome, an API gateway, and then this will respond. Okay, now we can scale RDS. Oh, is it? Wonderful, sir. I don't know. I have been working in cloud for many years. I didn't know till date that RDS can be scaled. In RDS, what you are doing is something which we call as replications. Okay, if you want high availability, then you need to create two databases where the data should be replicated between those databases. Okay, దాన్ని replication అంటాం సార్, స్కేలింగ్ అనకూడదు. Okay, fine then. Right, sir. Okay, now the advantage of this API gateway is, okay, let us assume that whenever you are this API I want to sell now, ఈ API నేను ఏం చేయాలనుకుంటున్నాను, క్వాలిటీ థాట్కి అమ్ముదాం అనుకుంటున్నాను. Let us assume that I want to sell it to Quality Thought, and I also want to sell it to some other institute. So Quality Thought gives me tries to tell that, okay, I will pay you 10,000 per month for using your library. Let us assume this is rough note, and other institute is paying me 2,000, and for both of them I am giving the same service. Is it fair? No. Then why is Quality Thought paying me 8,000 extra? I should give them some advantages, right? So what I'll tell to Quality Thought is, okay, first thing is, for Quality Thought you can make 1,000 requests per second. Enti? For Quality Thought I'm trying to tell that you can make 1,000 requests per second. For the other institute, what I'm trying to tell is you can make okay 50 requests per second. Okay, this can I control here? No. Am I clear on this, sir? Functionality of API gateway is I can do rate limiting. And the second thing is, generally whenever you are trying to call this APIs, you should be authenticated, right? Logged in, right? Let us assume that I have one more identity service. So in this identity service, what happens is you can log in, get the token, and you have to use that token. Now every time in this code, I don't want to check whether the user is authenticated or not. So what I'll tell is I will try to hook this API gateway with this ID service. And then what it will try to do is whenever a request is coming, it will try to check if the user is authenticated or not. So that I need not write code for if the user is authenticated or not. API gateway does it for me. Okay. And in the API gateway, what I can do is I can have very strict security controls so that I don't get hacked. So for this, Amazon, GCP, and AWS, these kind of services basically have machine learning models which will scan your request. If there is any threat, they will try to detect. I can do that. Over here, I can try to basically have some kind of firewall. And in this firewall, I can allow whitelist, blacklist, I can do all of that stuff. So ideally, for all of this, developer had to code earlier. Ivanni cheyadam developer em cheyali, fast API la code rayali. Okay, now I'm not doing all of that. I'm just trying to write my business logic, and all of that is basically taken by this API gateway. This API gateway is one of the architectural patterns, one of the design pattern. So then companies have started building up applications around it. Are we clear on this, sir? Okay, so you write your individual code, ensure that it is working correctly. The rest of the activities, there are other cloud services which will take care. Okay, am I clear on this? Yes. Okay. So now every cloud has this. Whatever I'm trying to tell right now is it is not that this is only Amazon has. Azure has it, GCP has it, but they have different names for all of this. Okay, right. Now, for example, your company tries to tell that whenever a CI/CD pipeline is starting, I want you to store that information in a database. So what is it that you will try to do? You will try to write a Lambda function, and in that Lambda function, you will try to take a request where you will be getting build ID and then storing it somewhere else, storing in the database or DynamoDB. And all your CI/CD pipeline has to do is make one curl request. That's it. Okay, and then you have to enable your API. ఇది తీసుకొని మీకు నచ్చినవి చేసుకోవచ్చు. Alexa ఉందా? In Alexa there are hell lot of services which run out of Lambda. There is one inbuilt trigger which is called as Alexa trigger. So you can, from the voice commands, you can invoke Lambda functions. Okay, right. So the firewall which I was trying to speak on the API gateway is basically called as web application firewall. Okay, right, sir. So this is the application which I want to basically build. Now, in API gateway will be used widely than fast API. No, sir. I cannot make that statement. Okay, right. So API gateway is used whether your API is fast API or irrespective of fast API. Okay, right. Fast API is Python's way of creating REST APIs. This is an architectural pattern. I can have a fast API over here, but still control it with API gateway. They are not related. Okay, fine, sir. Okay then. So now, do you agree that my Lambda function needs to speak with DynamoDB? Yes, because I want from Lambda function, what is it I want to do? I want to, yeah. So when a AWS service wants an access on other AWS service, we create roles. Okay, so let me go over here. For the people who are looking at this page for the first time, don't worry about it. When we learn AWS IAM functionalities, you will be able to do that. Just go to the roles and then try to tell that I'm creating a role for an AWS service. Okay, so what is your service? My service is Lambda. Then click on next. From Lambda, what is that you want to do? Okay, you select exactly whatever you want to do. So for example, if I want only DynamoDB, I'll type Amazon DynamoDB, and then I'll try to give whatever access which I want to give. So from Lambda functions, if I want to write a Boto code and then start or stop EC2 machines, then I'll be going over here and then selecting EC2. You will see EC2 full access, EC2 read only access. If I want to just get my EC2 instances IDs, this is more than enough. If I want to start or stop EC2 machines, then I need to select this. ప్రస్తుతానికి మనకు DynamoDB కాబట్టి let us focus on DynamoDB full access. అసలు ఈ దరిద్రం అంతా ఎందుకు రాసుకునేది నేనే కదా అనుకుంటే అడ్మినిస్ట్రేటర్ యాక్సెస్ ఇచ్చేయండి. But that is okay for now, but not okay in the context of your organizational applications. So what is the role name? Dynamo full access for Lambda. Okay, so this time when you are creating a Lambda function, we need to basically select this role saying that I want to speak with DynamoDB. Okay, now let me go over here. ఇది పెద్ద గొప్ప అప్లికేషన్ కూడా కాదు కాబట్టి let me select it, delete this. Okay, now the first thing which I want to do is I want to create a DynamoDB. So let me try to go to DynamoDB, and DynamoDB also, just for creation there is no cost. Okay, so all you need to do is go to the tables. Okay, create a table, and let me call this table as books, and I'll try to tell that every book will have ID, which is a string or a number, whatever you want to give, and that is the partition key. Partition key is a unique key over here. Okay, right, that's it. And rest of the structure you need not even worry about it. You pass whatever it want, it will try to take it, and then click on create table. The database is ready. Okay, so if you want to create this, that's it. And now if you want to basically look into items, right? So explore table items, and now let us assume that I want to create an item. So all I have to do is, my ID is, okay, 1. And then whatever it is, name. Name of this book is test. Okay. And then price. Price is 100.0. Just click on create item. That's it. Done. ఇందులో నేను క్రియేట్ చేసింది if item is, I'm not sure why there is no refresh button. View table details, explore table items, run. Okay, are you seeing this? Yeah, right. So that's it. It is this simple. Okay, so it will not take time, and the best part of this is what you can do is you can basically what do you call scale this database so that it is present in almost every region of AWS, and you can call this database from APIs running anywhere across the AWS regions, and it will work very fast. But there is one thing which is very bad at. Select the star. ఇది చేసారా బిల్లు పగులుద్ది. Select star from books అంటాం కదా మనం, right? So that is called as a scan operation. That means every record it has to scan. And generally DynamoDB is created to basically hold very large volumes of data. Very large volumes of data. So now if you are trying to store large volumes of data, and then if you try to do this scan operation, it takes a hell lot of time. So for that, in DynamoDB, what generally they do is they create something called as indexes, so that you can quickly search the data. Okay, అందుకనే మీకు ఇక్కడ చూస్తే రెండు ఆపరేషన్లు కనబడుతున్నాయా? One is scan, the other one is query. మనం చేసే పనులకి మనం అసలు ఇవన్నీ ఆలోచించాల్సిన పని లేదు for whatever we do as a DevOps engineers. But whenever you are trying to design applications, you should avoid using scan, because scan is the most costliest operation. Now, if you try to see the name of that, name of the key was called as partition key. Okay, the reason why it is called as partition key is whenever you try to insert any data in the partition key, what is it I have put as ID? So it will try to run the hash algorithm on that ID. Then you will get 1 or 3 results untai dantlo. It will get 3 or n number of results. So depending on what result it gets stored on a different server. Okay, so the way it works is, let us assume that I have a DynamoDB table. Okay, and let us assume that internally Amazon is basically trying to run this DynamoDB table on n number of servers depending on the size of your data. But let me try to put 3 servers, 3 physical servers is where it is getting stored, or 3 virtual machines or whatever. Now whenever I insert the data, I have something which is called as partition key, right? Okay, so what was my partition key? ID. Now this partition key will be passed to something which is basically called as hash function. Okay, now depending on the response of the hash function, what it does is your data gets stored either in this server or in this or in this. That is the importance of that partition key. That is how Amazon has basically designed it. So partition key lo anni same rakaluga unde avukudadu. Itteyamoddi data anta oke chotiki edutundi. Okay, so generally that's the basic idea. That's the reason why it has to be unique. Okay, this is not exactly equivalent to primary key, but this is what is happening, right sir? So now as your data grows, number of servers grow. As your data grows in DynamoDB, number of servers grow, and your data is distributed across what? Multiple servers. So for each of the server there will be again backups, but this is how Amazon organizes it internally. That's the importance of partition key. Clear on this, sir? Yes. Okay, now before I write a lambda function, the problem is I need to know the code on how to how can I write a Python code which will go and insert the data into DynamoDB? Okay, Yes. Okay. Right. So I am not going to do that. Okay. Because you guys now know what you have to do whenever you want to try to insert the database. Again, I'm trying to give 5 minutes of time. Try to tell that you want to insert the data into DynamoDB. How do you do that in Perplexity? And you tell me the idea. Okay. So just try to tell that how to insert, how to do CRUD operations, create, retrieve, update, and delete on DynamoDB from Python. Okay. You just tell me whatever your response is, I'll try to write code accordingly. I want you to Google out and look at sample also. Okay. $620 I think ఎక్కువే పడుతుంది. Because today I'm trying to tell DynamoDB. Tomorrow I might try to tell Cosmos DB in Azure. Day after tomorrow I might try to tell something like Bigtable or whatever it is in in Google cloud storage bucket. Okay. Or whatever it is. I want you to search for the code. Okay. చూస్తున్నారా? Okay, sir. Did you find the code? Yes. Is it very difficult? Yeah. Right. So now what I'll try to do is I have a role. I have DynamoDB table and my partition key's name is ID. Ideally, నేను book రాసేటప్పుడు ISBN అని వాడాలి. Okay. Because if you want to know ISBN, okay, right. This is a code which you see for a book which will get a unique ID for every book. Ideally, I should have used that, but let us assume that this is what I'll be passing. Okay, fine. So similarly, if I want to store the customer information, I might possibly take his phone number or Aadhaar number as a partition key. Yeah, because they are already unique in nature. So let us go and then let us try to write a lambda function. I can try to write all of this in one lambda, but again, I don't like that idea. So let me try to tell that I want to create a function, and my function is, you can try to write this code in Visual Studio Code also, but మనం అంత గొప్ప పనులు ఏం చేస్తలేదు కాబట్టి I'm trying to directly write it over here. Okay. So if you try to select the language as Java or C#, then there is no option. You can't edit in UI. You have to write the code in the local editors itself. Okay. Right. So let me try to call this function as create book, and then I will be changing the default execution role, and I'll be trying to tell use execution role. And what is the execution role which I have created? ఏదో క్రియేట్ చేసాం కదా, DynamoDB full access for lambda. Okay, let me tell that I want to create a. Okay, sir. Now, right. So if you basically try to look into DynamoDB Python using Boto 3 resource, నేను గూగుల్ చేయదలుచుకోలే. I think I should stop the habit of googling. Okay, fine, sir. Sorry, seeing there is a resource now. Okay, now if you want to create a table, I'll be using that. I don't want to create a table. I already have a table called as book. You కూడా పుస్తకం example ఇచ్చాడు చూసారా. Fine, my life is much more simpler then. Fine then. Now what I'll do is I'll be trying to tell that Boto3 dot resource. This is something which I'll try to go over here, and let me try to do this, and then I'll try to tell that import Boto. Okay, fine. Now what is my region, sir? AP hyphen మీరు అది రాయకపోయినా అదే అవుతుంది, because it takes the default region and my default region is Mumbai. And let me try to take the DynamoDB. Okay, now I want to basically get the table. So how will I get the table? All you need to do is you need to basically try to tell whatever table which you want to insert. So let me try to call it as table is equals to DynamoDB dot DynamoDB dot table of ఈ టేబుల్ పేరేంటి? books with B in small case. Right, sir? Okay. Now what I'll do is, if you try to look into insert function tries to tell the DynamoDB table dot put item, and item equals to whatever it is. Okay, నేను అంత సర్కస్ కూడా చేయదలుచుకోవాలా. Okay, DynamoDB table dot put table dot put item. Okay, and then if you try to look into this, what is that I need to write? I need to write item equals to, and then this format. So now all I need to do is item equals to event, because I'll be passing the JSON from the event. Okay. So once that is basically done, okay, this is the response which you will store. So let me try to take the response of that. And finally, here you will get response of response metadata and HTTP status code, all of that. I am not going to do all of that nonsense. I'll simply say that return JSON dot dumps of response. Let it, if it doesn't dump, then we'll try to look into the other stuff. Am I clear on this, sir? Yeah. ఇందులో ఏమైనా కష్టం ఉందా? Right. Fine then. Let me try to deploy this. Okay, sir. And now let me try to test, and let me try to configure the test event. And for configuring the test event, I need some JSON. And let me try to take this, and let me try to tell that this is my okay. Control H, replace single quotes with double quotes, replace all, hyphen. Fine then. Alignment లో అవసరం లేదు కానీ, బట్ ఎందుకులేండి, అందవికారంగా ఉంటుంది లేదంటే. Fine, sir. But if you remember, there is one thing which we need to basically give, that is our partition key, which is ID. And then let me try to give my ID is sample ISBN number. ఏదో ఒక నెంబర్ తీసుకుందాం. Ideally this should be valid ISBN. మనం అంత validation ఏం చేస్తలేదుగా. Right. Does it make sense? Yeah. Let me try to click on save. And then let me try to call this as book. ఇంకేంటి ప్రాబ్లం ఏంటి? There is an error in JSON. Comma ఇవ్వాల. Right. Save. Okay, sir. Let us test our function. Let me try to click on test. Okay. So float types are not supported. Use decimal. Float లో ఏం వాడాం మనం? దీని బాధ ఇదే. ప్రస్తుతం నేను అంత కూడా చేయదలుచుకోవాలా. ఓకే. ఇప్పుడేంటి? ఎడిట్ సేవ్డ్ ఈవెంట్. Save. I have saved this. Let me click on test. So it says that the message has been saved. Let me go over here. Let me get into books. Okay. Ideally, you should not be doing the scan operation, but that's okay. Sorry, getting this book. Is it saved? Okay. Now what I'll try to do is I'll try to build an API gateway and do all of this so that we can try to do the rest of the things also. I have a Lambda function now. Okay. So now what is it I'll be trying to do? I'll try to go and create an API gateway. See, all I'm trying to do is this. I have a create book now. Ideally, I have to write 3 other functions. Okay. API gateway. And then from the API gateway, I'll be basically calling this stuff. Okay. Last time questions and on chesama. Oh, last time we were trying to store interview questions or something like that. That was an example. Okay, fine. Right. So then it is asking what is an API type which you want. I want to build an REST API. So what is this? It is a new API. So what is this API's name? The API name is books. So this API will store books. Create an API. Okay, sir. If you remember, whenever we are trying to create an API, we used to write /API /v1 /books and all that stuff. Now over here, what you can do is you can add API actions and you can update the documentations. You can try to create methods, but let me try to click on create resource. So what is the path which you want? So over here, if you try to look into it, okay, are you seeing the path of it? Yeah. And what should I do? So let me try to, okay, this is resource ID, create method. Okay, direct ఇచ్చేద్దామా? వద్దు. Create resource, and my resource name is books. Create options method that allows all origin. Yeah, I want that, otherwise it will fail. Let me try to go with /books. If you want, you can try to write /API /v1 /books. So trying to tell some kind of versions. Okay, books on that. Now let me try to create a method. So what is your method? My method is post. Whenever someone calls post, I want to call a lambda function. And do we have any lambda function? Yes, I have a lambda function called as create books. And then do you have any authorizations? So for example, if you have any authentication settings and all of that stuff, you can try to select that. But right now we don't have any of the stuff. And if you want to validate stuffs also, there are validators. You want to have any headers added, query strings added. Do you have any request body modal? If you want to add modal, you can try to tell that what is the modal of the data so that it will validate. Remember, Swagger used to give us some kind of documentation. Swagger and even like Mano, if you try to look into it, we have said that calculator request object has 2 values. If you want to do, you can do all of that from that. But from this, for this moment, I'm not really worried about all of this stuff. But this is generally done by from your organization because we want a strict structure. And over here, you can basically do whatever you want. But let me try to click on create key. If you want authorizations, you can select API keys, you can select IAM, you can add many other stuffs. So let me try to clear that. I want to create a method. Done, sir? Now update documentation. If you want, you can update the documentation by trying to create everything. So it creates a fancy page. Okay. Let me try to call as deploy an API. So right now there are no stages. So let me try to create a new stage, which is called as dev. I'm still developing this. Okay. This is dev stage. Right. Successfully deployed. Now let me go to what are the APIs which I have. I have the APIs. Okay. And then if you try to look into the options, this is basically what it is. Okay. Good. Now let me get into stages. When I look into the stage, are you seeing this URL? Yeah. Now what I'll try to do is let me open something called as Postman, where I can send a REST request. Okay, or you can try to write a Python code request.post. Yeah. Okay. ఇది వద్దులేండి, దీంట్లో నానా చెత్త ఉంటుంది, అసలు ఉన్నాయి వద్దు. I want to send a HTTP request for a method which is post to where /dev/books. And then if you try to look into message body, my message body, 1 minute, raw data which is in the JSON format. And ఇందాక ఎక్కడ నుండో కాపీ చేసాం కదా. యా యా నేను పెద్దగా ఏం మార్చాను సార్, ఓన్లీ ISB అని ఒకటి మారుతుంటాను అంతే. రైట్, సో లెట్ మీ ట్రై టు రైట్ ID and sample ISBN. Let me try to take this and let me try to call 9DC 8 పెడదాం. Oh, okay. I'm really not worried about the sanctity of the data which I'm inserting. I'm worried about functionality, whether it is working or not. So now I go over here and then paste it, and let me click on beautify, and it says that. Okay, right sir, పేరు మారుద్దాంలేండి, ఇక్కడ డెవాప్స్ అని పెడదాం. యా, అండ్ $39 పెడదాం లేండి, సేమ్ అవుతుంది. యా, రైట్. నౌ లెట్ మీ ట్రై టు క్లిక్ ఆన్ సెండ్. So if you try to look at the response, it says that I got this response. Okay, fine. I can basically try to write the better response because we have dumped all of the stuff. I am getting this. I can conveniently give a message saying that 201 created. I can give fancy messages. I am not interested in beautification. Now let me basically go to the DynamoDB and run on the scan request again. Are you seeing 2 requests? Okay, remember what we have done in Fast API to do all of this. We had to do a lot of things. Create a Postgres database and then try to define a schema, structure, all others. ఇప్పుడు అసలు ఏమైనా చేసామా? ఓ 2 లైన్ల కోడ్, ఒక DynamoDB, and it was all about quickly basically bringing it up. Okay, now if I want to add other methods, is it very difficult? Okay, right. So if you want to basically get items, okay, I want to, okay, delete చేద్దాం. Okay, delete is simple, right? Okay, I have to table dot delete item key equals to year. Okay, fine. నేను క్రియేట్ డిలీట్ చేస్తాను సార్, మిగతాన్ని మీరు చేసుకోండి. యా, అండ్ ఐఎమ్ నాట్ షేరింగ్ దిస్ కోడ్ ఆల్సో బికాస్ షేర్ చేయాల్సినంత పెద్ద గొప్ప కోడ్ కూడా ఏమీ లేదు ఇందులో. డూ యూ వాంట్ మీ టు స్టోర్ దిస్ కోడ్ సమ్వేర్? యా, okay. Now let me go with lambda function. Okay, so I'll be trying to basically create a function which is called as delete book, and this is Python, and change the execution role, and our execution role is, what was it, DynamoDB full access for. Okay sir, now delete book. Okay, and delete book లో సగం కోడ్ క్రియేట్ బుక్ నుండి తీసుకోవచ్చు. ఓకే, I think people are waiting sir, just we'll try to finish it. Okay, now rather than table dot put item, now what is it I need to do? Table dot delete item, and then you need to give key. Okay, now all I'll try to do is table dot delete underscore item key equals to event. Done. Okay, now I don't want to even test this function, but what I'll try to do is I'll try to go over here and I'll go to the resources, and then I'll try to tell that, okay, this is a books. In this books I need to add one more method, and this method is of type delete. When you are trying to do this, invoke a lambda function, and the lambda function is delete book and create method. Once you have done that, deploy. What is our stage? My stage is created. Okay, now I think it will be the same. Yeah, invoke URL is same. Let me try to tell that I want to go and do the delete operation, and then I'll try to tell that this is what I want to delete. Okay. Now let me try to click on send request. Okay. It says that it has done something. Okay, manaki anta fancy idem avasaram ledu. Let me go over here, and then right now we have 2 records. Let me try to run. Simple. So now can't you write update and get all books? Yes, as simple as that. So do you agree that it is very easy to build APIs now? Why? Did the coding reduce? No, we have better technology. Right? Many developers don't upgrade to this because they think it is difficult. No, it is not making your life difficult. It is making your life extremely simple. Okay, you need not worry about unnecessary things when you are trying to write the code. All of that is managed by cloud. Am I clear on this, sir? Yeah. So tomorrow we'll try to do the similar operations on Azure as well as GCP, where we'll try to create one function in GCP, an API. In the world of GCP, it is APG, API manager in Azure, and some functions, and try to write some code. Okay, but just to get the basic code, there is no need for you to know coding. You can search it out. But how do you apply it? How do you debug it? That is basically where everything comes into play. Okay, can we use HTTP API for creating API gateway, since it also has post method? So when REST, what can we use HTTP API? Sir, the point is you can use HTTP API there. You can write WebSockets there. It depends on what you're developing. Okay, my use case was REST, so I've selected REST. But API gateway also supports HTTP APIs. They support WebSockets. Okay, right. Right, they are also supporting gRPC if I'm not wrong. Yeah, fine. But generally never use HTTP API. Always you should go by REST API. HTTP is a very lame API. There is no structure, no architectural style and all that stuff. Okay, sir. ఏమన్నా నేర్చుకున్నా వాళ్ళ క్లౌడ్తో సుఖంగా ఉంటుందని తెలిసి ఉంటుంది ఆఖరికి. కథలో నీతి కూడా అదే. రైట్? సో యా, ఫైన్ సార్. So what you need to tell is, you tell that you have written a Lambda function to do some of the administrative activities. What are the administrative activities? Deleting EC2 machines, starting EC2 machines, and all other stuff, so that whenever you send a curl request now, can't I stop EC2 machines now? Ilage Lambda lo, I have written boto3.ec2 and ec2.stop instance or start instance, and from my API gateway I pass a instance ID. Can't I stop it? Yeah. So you try to basically tell this, but you try to tell that you have written an API gateway to write build ID, commit ID details in your DynamoDB table for whatever needs which your company was trying to do. Entavaraku chepte chaala ekkuva. What is it I have stored? I have stored books. As a DevOps engineer, what is it you will be trying to tell? Whenever we trigger, whenever a build happens, the first thing what happens is our API will try to speak with Lambda. And what it does is, for Lambda, it will try to send a JSON where it will be having build ID, it will be having the author name, and it will be trying to have some information about what are the changes which he has done, and it stores in the DynamoDB table. Okay, why your company wants to do that? Because they are building some analytical application on top of it. They are trying to build some query APIs around it. So I've been asked to do that. I have learned and I have done it on my own as my extra time. Don't try to tell that it is the main activity. You try to tell that this is an activity which you have vouched for and then done it. Yeah, right. Manaku sagam vachini eppudu ilage cheppali. Interview lo gurtettukondi. If you know anything not that great, you try to tell that recently there was one requirement where I have asked that and I've learned only this much point, but I'm still working on it. I'll become better in next 1 month or so. Ante. Right? So at least they will know that you have run some Lambda function. You know what a API gateway is. Okay, and Lambda functions can be triggered without API gateway from CLI also. Lambda function trigger చేయడానికి API gateway తోనే పని అవసరం లేదు. You can try to trigger them from AWS CLIs. Okay, so you can tell this kind of things in your for all the experienced people. For all the people who are freshers, I said the trick. Write this, put this in your GitHub, and then try to write a documentation around it and share it in your LinkedIn, saying that today I'm extremely చాలా మంది చేస్తుంటారు, వచ్చిన రాదు సావదాలకి రోజు LinkedIn లో ఇయే పోస్టులు. But you try to give your GitHub documentation saying that this is the activity which I've done. Whatever I've written, try to take some screenshots and then post it on LinkedIn. So this basically creates a good impression for freshers. Experienced people, this should be part of your storytelling. Yeah. Okay, sir. Thank you. Right. క్లౌడ్ కొండాల్సిన వాళ్ళు ఉండిపోండి, మన ప్రయాణం ఇంకా ముగియలా. ఓన్లీ పైథాన్ గురించి వచ్చిన వాళ్ళు వెళ్ళిపోవచ్చు. ఓకే.